We enter this first week of what's called ordinary time, and unfortunately it's a phrase that gets lost in translation. Because ordinary doesn't really refer to ordinary as we think of, kind of dull, daily, nothing eventful, like ordinary life. But rather ordinary is coming from the term ordinal, or closer in Spanish, ordenar. And when you order something, pones algo en orden, it presumes that there is a beginning and an end. If you don't have a beginning or an end, then there's no order. And so ordinary time is ordered with a beginning and an end in sight. It's ordinal numbers, the first week, the second week, the third week. But what's the beginning and what's the end? In older times, this time was called the time after Epiphany. And so time is ordered following the last major feast. And we'll move on later on towards Lent, and that's a different order. Towards Easter, that would be a different order. And then eventually we hit Pentecost at the end of Easter, and then ordinary time resumes again, but it's always looking back towards the last feast, which would be Pentecost, and thus the time was known as the time after Pentecost. Now we call it just ordinary time. Well, that's why I say it gets lost in translation, because we lose the sense of what are we ordering from? What are we counting off from? We're counting off from the Epiphany, and if we pay attention to the prayers of the Mass, it's there. It's inside there. The opening antiphon already talked about seeing the one who is enthroned, in which the angels praise day and night. Well, remember that double side of Advent, and what Christmas is talking about the coming of Christ, Christ who came, Christ who is to come, and one Christ has come, both at the beginning and at the end of time. Well, it's a reflection of that, Christ who has come. And then even the opening prayer, that we may do what must be done in light of what we've seen. What is it that we've seen? Go back again to the Epiphany. Go back again to the three kings. What did they see? This is the reflection. This is what our time is ordered from. And it leads us to the next great mystery, from the birth of Christ to the passion, death, and the resurrection of the Lord. And so while we kind of still call it ordinary time, let's not fall into ordinary either. There's nothing dull, there's nothing mundane, and there's nothing meaningless about this time. The first reading and both the psalm are two that are kind of dear to me, because ever since I was a little kid, I remember hearing this from the book of Samuel. Eli, who the elder who's inside the temple, the young Samuel who's awakened by the voice, or this urging of having to respond, that he's being called by someone, and he mistakens Eli for the Lord. And so Eli, who tells him, next time you feel this call, don't respond to me, respond to God, saying, Lord, here I am. And, well, Samuel becomes the great Samuel, eventually king of Israel. That reminds me, and thinking about this, again, it's been one always that's impacted me, how, well, the call of the Lord is a personal call, and it's an unmistakable call. It's not a call that we don't think, is he really calling me or not? No, I know I'm being called. Now, how we answer that call, well, that's up to us. Father Eddie Alvarez at Jesu always has said that he does not doubt for one moment that God has stopped calling men to vocations. If he did stop calling men to vocations, then we got a big problem. But no, the problem is that we don't know how to respond to that call. In worst cases, we don't respond to it at all. And probably in other cases, well, we just respond negatively to the call. Very few respond yes to that call. Now, to respond to that call is not an easy thing either. And that call could get confused many times in different ways, just as Samuel confused the call of the Lord to Eli's call. But it was Eli, being as a priest, as an elder, kind of a father figure to Samuel, that taught him how to discern eventually, is what it was, is here. To discern, and he realized that call was not, he was confusing the call, Samuel, for God's call. It was confusing his call for for Eli's call rather than God's call. And so perhaps that's one of the things that we can do as fathers, spiritual fathers, or even fathers of families, is guide our sons in how to respond to calls. Now, for perhaps all of our sons, maybe that's too late to consider that call. But for the future fathers, and there are a couple here, don't forget about that role, that perhaps most important thing you can teach your sons, how to discern that call, how to say yes to the Lord, and guide him. Many times, and I think just today in regular life, there's so many options, and there's so many options for young people that they get paralyzed. They make no decision. I remember looking in when I was going into college and trying to select a major, there were pages and pages and pages, probably 50 pages of majors that I can do. And a good number of them sounded great. I couldn't do them all. Sometimes some guys try to do them all and they end up graduating with nothing. It is a help and something that would help as well. And I remember my father did as well. He said, no, you're good for this. Forget about the rest, even though it sounds great. And so, it's kind of donde me encarrilé. So we need that. And I think that's perhaps one of the greatest gifts that a father can give to a son, encarrilarlo. Direct him, know exactly where he can serve, what is the best. Because they pay attention eventually. In the name of the Father, and Son, and of the Holy Spirit.